The question is simple. Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files? Yes or no?
Why don't you try spelling it out?
Yes
if you're
or
gonna mock
no, Director?
Use the alphabet.
Yes or no?
No? A, B, C,
Director,
D, E, F?
it sounds like you don't want to tell us. Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name was in the Epstein file?
Three minutes ago, Eric Swalwell did something that every single person in that hearing room will carry with them for the rest of their lives. Not because he raised his voice, not because he performed outrage for the cameras, not because he did anything dramatic at all. He did something far more dangerous than dramatic. He opened a folder, looked directly at Kash Patel, and asked a question so precisely constructed, so surgically targeted, so devastatingly documented that the entire room went still. Not the polite still of people waiting for an answer. The suffocating, airless still of people who have just realized they are watching something that was never supposed to happen in public. Something that powerful people spent years and enormous resources making sure would never happen in public. And Kash Patel, the man who walks into those hearing rooms like he already knows how they end, the man who has survived every congressional ambush thrown at him, the man whose entire political identity is built on the promise of being unbreakable. Patel had nothing. No answer, no deflection that worked. No language that fit. Just silence. And the sound of 15 years of buried documents finally breaking the surface. And if you are new here, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Because this story is not ending today. This is just the beginning. And I want you to see every single development as it happens. Watch this until the very end. Because the moment Swalwell reads those words out loud, the moment the folder opens, the expression on Kash Patel's face will tell you everything that his words have been refusing to say for 11 months. And I'll tell you exactly what that expression means. But first, you need to understand how we got here, because this story didn't start today. It started a long time ago. And what happened in that room this morning is the end of a thread that goes back further than most people realize. Stay with me. Let me set the scene, because the physical details matter. Senate Judiciary Committee afternoon session, originally scheduled as a standard oversight hearing. Budget review, personnel updates, the kind of procedural theater that fills C-SPAN's schedule and empties congressional galleries. That is what it was supposed to be. Patel's team received the agenda 3 days before the hearing. Standard material, nothing unusual. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, because Swalwell's office had kept it buried inside routine procedural language, was that Swalwell had requested a change to open session. His stated reason, the public interest in transparent oversight of federal law enforcement. At the time, inside Patel's circle, someone probably read that language and filed it as boilerplate. Political positioning, they've seen it before. They were wrong about that. They were catastrophically wrong. Because Eric Swalwell, California representative, former federal prosecutor, the man who spent 3 years as lead manager for the first Trump impeachment, Eric Swalwell does not request open sessions for political positioning. He requests them because he wants a witness to answer questions on camera, in public, on the record, with no ability to claim later that the exchange was mischaracterized or taken out of context. He wanted the world to see this. Every camera, every microphone, every word. Now we know why. And before I tell you what was in that folder, before I tell you what Swalwell read aloud into the congressional record this afternoon, I need you to think about something. You've probably wondered at some point why the Epstein files have taken this long to surface. You probably asked yourself why every attempt to release those documents has hit the same wall over and over again. National security, ongoing investigations, privacy protections, the same language, the same delays, the same wall. I'll bet you assumed the answer was somewhere complicated, something layered, some vast bureaucratic machinery too tangled to untangle. What Swalwell showed today is that the answer isn't complicated at all. The answer fits on 19 documents, and every single one of them has the same name on it. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let me take you back to where this really begins. To understand why today mattered, you need to go back to February of this year. 11 days after Kash Patel was confirmed as FBI director, his office issued an internal directive to the Classification Review Board. The directive ordered an expedited review, not a routine review, an expedited one, meaning it moved to the front of the queue, meaning it was treated as urgent, of all Epstein-related documents containing references to. And this is the language from the directive itself. Current and former government officials and their close associates. Swalwell's legal team first encountered this directive as a footnote, a single footnote buried in a 47-page FBI legal brief filed in response to a Freedom of Information Act appeal. One footnote, 7 lines. Most people would have missed it. Swalwell's team didn't miss it. They flagged it, pulled on it, filed a separate motion specifically targeting the directive's disclosure, got denied, appealed the denial, went back to federal court, won a partial disclosure order, and spent the next 6 weeks reconstructing what the directive actually produced. What it produced was a list. 31 documents reviewed, 19 reclassified, 19 documents that had been cleared for public release under the prior administration's declassification process. Documents the American public was supposed to see, pulled back, moved to restricted status, disappeared back into the dark. And here is the detail that changes everything. The detail that Swalwell walked into that hearing room with documented proof of every single one of those 19 documents contains references to Donald Trump. Every single one. Think about that for a second. Think about what that means. Not some of them, not most of them, all of them 19 documents. One name, reclassified inside the first 2 months of Kash Patel's directorship. That is not a coincidence. That is not a bureaucratic accident. That is a pattern. And patterns, unlike accidents, have explanations. The question Swalwell walked in to ask today was simple. What is the explanation? The question Patel couldn't answer is the same one. Patel arrived the way Patel always arrives. 3 lawyers, 2 aides, that walk. You know, the one shoulders back, chin up, the measured stride of a man who has been through enough of these rooms to stop being afraid of them. He took his seat at the witness table, arranged his materials, exchanged a brief nod with the chairman. He looked, if anything, slightly bored, like a chess player settling in front of a board he has already solved. The first 45 minutes did nothing to change that calculation. Other committee members went first. Appropriations, personnel consolidations, surveillance protocols, the standard terrain. Patel handled it the way he always handles it. Answer the question you wish they'd asked instead of the one they actually asked. Give the appearance of cooperation while surrendering nothing. Run out the clock without looking like you are running out the clock. He is exceptional at this. You don't survive the Washington machinery as long as Kash Patel has without becoming exceptional at this. You could see the rhythm of it, the practiced ease, the slight lean back in his chair after each exchange that said, survive that one, move to the next. And then Swalwell picked up the microphone. And the room changed. I've watched enough congressional hearings to recognize the difference between a politician performing and a prosecutor hunting. It is not volume. It is not aggression. It is something in the quality of attention, a stillness that is somehow more dangerous than movement, a patience that reads as absolute certainty about where the next 5 minutes are going. The room felt it before Swalwell said a single word. Even Patel felt it, his posture corrected slightly. His eyes moved to his lawyers for just a fraction of a second before returning to the microphone. He felt it, he just didn't know what it was yet. Nobody in that room did, except Swalwell. Director Patel, his voice was quiet, almost pleasant. I want to talk to you today about a specific set of documents. Patel nodded, composed. His standard response ready. Of course, Congressman, I'll do my best to assist the committee. Pause on that. I'll do my best, Swalwell. Cut it immediately. I am not asking for your best, he said. I am asking for the truth. Let's see if those are the same thing. That was the first cut invisible, almost, if you weren't paying attention. But I was paying attention, and I saw Patel's jaw tighten by approximately 2 millimeters, just enough. Because what Swalwell had just done was draw a line between assistance and truth in public, on the record, before a single document had been opened, and invite Kash Patel to step over it. Patel stepped over it. They always step over it, and Swalwell knew he would. That is why it was the opening move. Director Patel, I want to ask you about the classification review process your office initiated in February, specifically the expedited review directive issued to the Classification Review Board on the 11th of February. Are you familiar with that directive? Patel didn't miss a beat. Senator, classification reviews are routine procedural processes that the FBI conducts on an ongoing basis as part of its commitment to transparency within the bounds of. That is not what I asked. Silence. Are you familiar with that specific directive Patel shifted in his seat? Just slightly. If you weren't watching, you'd miss it. I was watching. I've been briefed on the general nature of our ongoing review processes. Yes, general nature, that is a Patel specialty. The answer that sounds like an answer but contains nothing. Swalwell wasn't having it. He opened the folder, slowly, deliberately, the way a prosecutor opens an exhibit when they want the jury to understand that what is inside already proves the case. He pulled out the first document, held it where the cameras could see it. According to this directive, partially disclosed under federal court order last month, the February review was specifically targeted at Epstein-related documents containing references to current and former government officials and their close associates. He looked at Patel. That is not routine. That is targeted. Who decided the scope? Patel glanced at his lawyers. One of them shifted. Patel held up a single hand, tiny gesture, nearly invisible, but it meant, "I've got this." He turned back to Swalwell. "The directive you are referencing was part of a broader effort to ensure compliance with privacy protections for individuals not charged with any crime. Any individual, regardless of political affiliation, privacy protection." Swalwell repeated the words slowly. "For whom exactly?" "For any individual referenced in those materials." Patel said. Swalwell nodded. Once, then he pulled out the second document. Here is where everything accelerated. The second document wasn't a directive. It was a list. 31 documents reviewed. 19 reclassified. 19 documents cleared for public release. Gone reclassified. Pulled back into restricted status within 60 days of Kash Patel taking office. Swalwell held it up. 19 documents, director, cleared for release. Reclassified after you arrived. He paused, and in that pause, you could hear the gallery, the faint sound of people barely breathing. How many of those 19 documents contain references to Donald Trump? Dead silence. I mean, that literally. I've described silence in congressional hearings before. The polite pause, the deliberate quiet of a politician gathering their talking points. But this was different. This was the silence of 50 people simultaneously holding the same breath. The silence of a room where everyone has just understood that the question they thought might get asked has actually been asked out loud on camera in the building where American law is made. Patel's face went through 3 expressions in approximately 2 seconds. The flicker, a fraction of a moment where something real broke through, something that looked unmistakably like being caught. The calculation, eyes going slightly distant, processing, sorting through options that were rapidly narrowing. And then the mask back in place, the professional controlled, "I am in command" mask. "Congressman, I am not going to confirm or deny the specific subjects of any classified review process, because doing so would itself potentially compromise every single one." Swalwell's voice was quiet, completely quiet, which was somehow louder than anything he could have shouted. "Director Patel, every single one of the 19 reclassified documents contains references to Donald Trump. Every one he let that land. Let it sit in the air of that room for several seconds before he continued. That is not a coincidence. That is a documented pattern inside your agency. And I want you to explain it to this committee and to every American watching right now. I need to stop here for a moment and explain something important, because I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking, is this just politics? Is this just a Democrat going after a Trump appointee for political points? And I want to answer that question directly, because it matters. What Swalwell presented today was not an accusation. It was not speculation. It was not the political theater that fills most of these hearings and leaves nothing behind. He presented documents, FBI documents, a classification directive produced by Patel's own agency, a reclassification list produced by Patel's own review board, a pattern verifiable in the public record that anyone with access to the disclosure timeline can confirm independently. This is not one senator's opinion about what the evidence means. This is the evidence sitting on a table in a congressional hearing room. And the question of what it means is precisely the question that the FBI director of the United States refused, on camera, on the record, with no ability to walk it back, refused to answer. That matters regardless of your politics. That matters if you care about what federal law enforcement agencies do with the power they've been given. And if you've watched this far, if this is the kind of story that you believe needs a larger audience, please like this video right now. It costs you nothing. It means everything to reaching the people who need to see this. Patel tried to recover after that. He always tries, but I've watched enough witnesses in enough rooms to know the difference between a man who is recovering and a man who is performing recovery. What Kash Patel was doing in those final minutes was the latter going through motions, speaking words, waiting for the clock to run out. The real answer had already been given. In 22 seconds of silence, in pale knuckles and a trembling water glass and a voice that had gone quiet in a room full of cameras, that is the answer. That is the whole answer. And it is now in the public record forever. Subscribe. This story is not finished, not even close.